Hello everyone, this is Srini. Good evening. I'm on my evening walk. It's a bit sultry today. Okay, today, this next few minutes, I just wanted to cover a few things that I think is happening, especially with the global economy, the global currencies, wars, and I want to tie everything together based on what I think is going on. Okay, so some of you know that this month, August, around 22nd, 23rd, there is a meeting in South Africa by the BRICS countries. BRICS stands for BRICS. B is Brazil, R Russia, I India, C China, and S South Africa. So these few countries formed this alliance a few years back. They're all having lots of gold reserves. They gold mining, and also they have lots of gold reserves. Okay, so what they are doing lately is, trying to establish trade amongst themselves and with other countries that are joining them, by a gold currency. Okay, they are either going to use a basket of currencies that they all have, or they will be using the gold as a currency. So why that's important, especially for US dollars. Okay, as some of you may know or may not know, US dollars has been in the existence for over 100 years, and at least in the last 70 years as a world reserve currency. What that means is all the world is using US dollar, most of the countries, to buy crude oil from the OPEC countries, which are Saudi Arabia and all the Middle East Gulf countries that produce oil. But they have an agreement since the 70s to have the rest of the world buy oil, crude oil in US dollars. So fast forward, that's how it became world reserve currency, which is also called the petrodollar. So every country needs balance of trade, and they trade with each other, especially when it comes to oil. No matter which country is buying crude oil from, at least 80% of it is from these OPEC countries. They were forced to buy in US dollars, right? So that's how US became the strongest currency, US dollar, and economy. But now fast forward, since past few years, you have seen a lot of turmoil with respect to certain countries. We saw in early 2000s, we saw Iraq war. Prior to that, we saw in Libya there were some issues. Then we saw Venezuela, and Iran was always, in some kind of turmoil and issues with the countries, especially the Western countries. And it's all because of this oil, and some other countries were not willing to trade the oil in US dollars. Okay, so that was kind of what was going on all these years in bits and pieces. A little bit of background on US dollar. It's been a currency now for over 100 years. Till the World War I and World War II, especially in World War II, US dollar took, sorry, there are a lot of flies here. US dollar took the role of this world reserve. Prior to that, it was Great Britain. Okay, we had British pound that ruled the world for probably the prior to 200 years, the 1700s through 1900s. Okay, those days there was industrial revolution, but not so much on crude oil. The 1900s, 2000s is all about oil, crude oil, okay? But when after World War II, the US dollar was strengthened by backing up of gold. So what that means is, if there was $1 printed, there was equal amount of gold in gold reserves. So the government, with the help of banks, could not just arbitrarily print dollars. They had to have the reserves in gold. And the rest of the current world currencies were pegged to dollar. So indirectly they were also connected back to the gold. But with this 1971, 72, 73, that period, US, for whatever reason, decided to undo the backup of gold. Okay? And then fast forward 50 years now, it's just printing based on US Treasury bonds. And because the US dollar is a world reserve petrodollar, most countries need the dollars. So the central banks in those countries also print the dollars to buy the crude. But if you look at 2008 financial crash, and then lately the COVID financial crash that happened in 2020, the US dollar printing was in far excess. So the 2008-2009 crash saw US dollar to boost up the economy. They printed close to $1 trillion and helped certain banks and businesses to come up, and then stock market and everything came back up. So it was the printing of dollars that improved the economy, not necessarily the GDP growth or vice versa. Later on, the businesses flourished, but so with that, the US debt has been growing. Okay, that's why I'm telling all this story. Fast forward in 2020, I think they printed over a few trillions of dollars for COVID crisis and gave away as PPP loans and started funding other projects and stuff like that. So now as we stand, prior in this year, there was an issue with the debt ceiling where US government cannot do its business unless it takes care of the debt. So there was a ceiling that was there around the June period. Then somehow the ceiling got lifted off. So that means now they can print much more money. But end of the day, US government debt, it's not the private debt, not the other forms of private debt, which is far greater, derivatives and all that. The government debt itself, if you look at it, it's close to $32 trillion, which is humongous. US revenue, if I understand right, is close to $5 trillion a year. So with the debt of $32 trillion, and with the high interest rates now at 7%, I think the US debt now is, the interest itself is close to $1 trillion now. So it's extremely difficult now for for the US dollar, and with excessive printing, it's been a high rate of inflation. So now the rest of the countries also were holding dollars. They see this inflation, right? In the meantime, some countries, especially Saudi Arabia and others, have been taking sides of the BRICS countries, especially Russia and others, to start trading oil in a currency different than US dollars. So they have been doing that for China in yuan. India has been buying oil from Russia in Indian rupees, and so on. So with the recent escalations of all these wars and issues going on in Ukraine and Russia, it's compounding the situation as far as this trading of oil and gas goes. So long story short, it's a direct, I would say, tussle between US dollar, which is kind of in a high inflation mode, and the new currency that's coming, forecasted to come later this month, by the BRICS countries. Okay. And in the meantime, you have been hearing a term called CBDC, which stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. Because the US dollar has such high inflationary stage now with the debt, and lost a lot of its value as in the last 100 years, it's kind of coming to its end of life. So these US and other Western countries' central banks are coming up with a digital currency that will replace the paper currency, the fiat currency that we see. So then they will have to say what happens to the debt, how will that get all rolled over, what happens to the banks, who takes care of what, and stuff like that. Okay. So August end, we'll probably know what BRICS are coming back with. There is a rollout of FedNow coin. That's a part of this central bank digital currency, CBDC, which kind of is, I would say, in the pilot stage right now. So hopefully, we will learn a little more. There's not much clarity on what's going on. It depends on who you ask and what you read. The mainstream news, you always hear more on the CBDC and rollout and all the good stuff. In the meantime, we see banks failing, especially in the Western countries like US and Europe. And then, we have the BRICS currencies. My understanding is now the BRICS, they call it BRICS Plus because they are close to 50 odd countries that's partnering with BRICS. So in interesting times. I'll post one more video once this information settles in. Ask questions, comments. It's not an easy subject, but it's something that will impact all of us. It's already impacted. We have been seeing that ever since the past few years. We saw the inflation go high, shortages ever since the COVID crisis has hit. Business is not normal. Some businesses are flourishing, others are not. But at the same time, the costs have gone up. Inflation is very high because of the US dollar and printing that's been going on. I'm focused on US dollar because that's the world reserve currency that matters to all of us, and especially to us living in the US. Similar things happening in other countries. You can see what happened in Pakistan or Sri Lanka, partly in India. There is currency war, right? So what is the outcome of these BRICS countries meetings in the next few weeks will show us what is likely to happen in the near future, especially when it comes to the futuristic currency, whether it will be central government digital coin, which is CBDC, led by the central government and Federal Reserve and others, or it will be the BRICS gold-based currency. So it's not going to be an easy one. Both will fight for their own stuff, and depending on which country is supporting which one will determine the outcome for that specific country. Okay, more to follow. Okay, it's pretty hot now. I'm going inside. Thanks. Okay? See you, bye.